coming into Echoes, Caitriona, after what happened to Claire at the end of the season, it really kind of inspires an original storyline in regards to her kind of self-medicating. Talk about how Matt or the executive producing team kind of pitched that to you, and what your thoughts were about playing that with her.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting. I think last season we started these conversations about, wanting to give her enough time to process and heal. I think that that's as important, if not more so important, than seeing these events happen to people. How do we explore the trauma? How do we explore how people cope with trauma? And for Claire, it was really interesting to see her unravel in a way that we never have before. And I think that's one thing that I always sort of felt with Claire, like she goes through these tough situations and she's just able to get up and get on.
And Sam, as dark as that storyline gets and other things happen, I think what's really lovely about the first 2 episodes is that the storytelling really brings us back to those moments between Jamie and Claire, whether it's a book moment where, they're being intimate together, or it's just those moments where they're talking to each other and having that rapport where they really check in with each other. Some of them are book related, some are not, but tell me about, being able to kind of bring that back into the show again after, to give it those moments of lightness when there are still dark things happening.
Yeah, I think it is really important, and I think something that we probably started a couple of seasons ago, we talked about seeing the sort of more domestic side of them, just the everyday life, right? And I think it's really nice to see these characters just being, granny and granddad or whatever it is, but just enjoying each other's company, and how do they lead their lives. And Jamie is aware of what's happened to Claire, and I think he's giving her space, and obviously that does come to a head because she's hiding all these secrets. But I think, I think those moments, it's great to see the characters interacting, and it is each other that they always come back to, their comfort and their home.
You are always with me. Sometimes I think you're an angel, Claire.
I just wanted to ask thematically, season 6, what did Matt kind of present to the two of you as the arc for Bree and Roger this season? Because it's kind of a mix up now. There's some things that have taken from other books and not. So what thematically did he prepare you guys for in terms of character arc?
Yeah, we were so intrigued to see what they were going to bring in from different seasons and how they were going to mix it up. But we were saying before, for us, it's kind of our favorite season for Bree and Roger as a team, because they are suddenly the unit and everything around them is sort of crumbling, but they're not fighting internally. And they have really become the calm amongst the chaos on the ridge, and almost the rock that everybody else is going to with their problems. And they're now the problem solvers and the fixers. And now that they've decided this place is home, they're just so rooted in their own relationship and together that it's just gotten them to a really great place.
Richard, it's kind of a movement for Roger to get more spiritual, and it's also kind of connecting back to, his adoptive father. Tell me a little bit about how that kind of helped you, kind of play him this season, and also the kind of vibe, like you said, you guys are rocks, and that kind of leans into that kind of thought of like him really kind of coming to more of a spiritual center.
Yeah, I think he's always been, apologies for the cliche, but finding himself, I think he's always been searching for his purpose and what his role was. And I think since they embraced Fraser's Ridge as home, since they came to that understanding that actually this is where they belong with the Frasers, they belong with each other on the ridge, I think that's opened up a whole different perspective for Roger. And I think he's just doing a bit of literally soul searching. I think he'd sort of resisted the idea of moving into a sort of spiritual role before now. His adopted father was a minister. He's grown up with it. And I think that's almost why he took a different direction into academic, into history, in which he excelled. So I think he would have gone down that avenue a while back had it been something that had been in him. So it's interesting that he turns that that he takes that path now. And I think it has been a lot of what has been going on. I think it is, as Sophie was saying, it seems like they are very settled and very solid in themselves now, which has been a long time coming. Roger and Bree are, you know, their foundation is kind of rock solid now. And I think it's everyone around them and their need for help and for spirituality and for comfort and for solace. And I think he sees in him the ability to help people. And Roger's always been kind of about that, hasn't he? Whenever someone has been in need or whenever there's been someone that he thinks he can help, he's always just kind of, sometimes at his peril, you know, sort of dove in there. And I think that's kind of what he's doing with the whole ministering thing. And Brianna frequently reflects, Roger, you're not a minister. You're not a minister, Roger. And he's like, okay, well, I'm trying to be.
Yeah, that's Brianna's party line this season. You're not a minister, but then it does come to fruition why she's saying it and the concerns behind it. But initially, it's like, all right, Brie, come on, let him do his thing.
So for Echoes, I have to laugh just because the sequence where Tom Christie comes into the Fraser house, Rick, and Roger's like, welcome to the Ridge. And it's kind of like the worst possible thing. There's like a really great subtle comedic line that happens, even though there's the simmering scene, especially when Jamie comes in. But it also kind of goes to like Roger still hasn't lost his kind heart, even when there perhaps some wolves coming into the family's perimeter.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of indicative of his character, though, isn't it? He does that. He kind of throws himself.
He doesn't know how to read a room, does he?
Huh?
He doesn't know how to read a room. It's like, oh, no,
he sometimes does not know how to read a room, yeah. And I think he just saw. I think what happened there also was Roger knows Jamie, and he knows that Jamie's a man of his word and will honour this writing that Tom Christie brings him. So I don't think he has I don't think he's really second guesses whether or not he should. But the way he does it, yeah, I think is basically, you know, another example of Roger just throwing himself into a situation to help someone, which could later come back to bite him in the ass. And I suppose it kind of does.
Sophie, I have to ask, you know, obviously the show is handling the aftermath of the assault, just like it handled it with Bree. Now Bree gets to be the concerned person for her mom. I love that scene where she's kind of gently trying to prompt Claire to address it. Tell me about, you know, when the show adds those kinds of elements to it, and that really allows for that connection of mother-daughter in the worst way, but also in the way that only the two of them really understand.
Yeah, I think it was really important to show, just like we showed their individual responses to the assault at the time in different ways, to show their PTSD differently, and also a way of handling it. It's really important, I think, not only to help the victims, but to also show people who are close to those people how to deal with it. And because there's not always a wrong or right way, and it's such a hard thing to navigate. It's like, do you make someone talk about it, or do you just not? Do they then think I don't care if I don't ask? And I think they've handled it beautifully, the writers, and through Bree having that moment where she's like, look, Mum, I want you to know I'm still thinking of you. I want you to know that you can talk to me. I know you're not fine, because I used to say that, but I can see you don't want to talk about it. I won't press it. But like she said in season 5, you know, you have my hand in my ear if you need it. And I just think that it's such a beautifully simple way of saying, in your own time, but please don't suffer alone. And I think that's the best you can really do for someone.
And this, I promise you, won't come between us.